Wraps are a great choice for breakfast, lunch and even a light dinner. The filling possibilities are endless and they're so easy to put together. A lot of people have trouble with them falling apart. So today I'm going to give you 3 tips so that you can create beautifully presented wraps that won't fall apart. Hi, I'm Taryn. Welcome! I'm so excited to share my tips for making filled wraps with you today, and as always, with a focus on presentation. We used to make hundreds of these for conferences and events, and we'd have a big production line set up in the kitchen. We're not making that many today, but the same principles apply. Before we get into it, I want to show you what not to do when making wraps. And then I'll show you my tips for doing it the right way. Don't use a round wrap. Don't spread on the mayonnaise. Don't cover the whole wrap surface with the fillings. It's painful making it this way, but hopefully it's illustrating a point. Don't roll it up loosely. Let's have a look. Because the wrap is round, you have these edges without much substance that fall apart or are left as offcuts because you can't serve them. The filling is coming out past the outer edge of the wrap and the mayonnaise is oozing out everywhere. Well, that wasn't very successful, was it? Our wraps aren't going to make themselves, so let's get into it the right way. So what do we need to make filled wraps? Obviously, we need some wraps. I prefer to use rectangle shaped ones, but they aren't always available. So sometimes I use the round ones instead and trim them into a rectangle shape. To do this, simply fold it in half gently and then using a pizza wheel or chef's knife, cut through both layers. Make sure you're using nice fresh wraps that are very pliable. If they're getting a bit old, they'll start to crack, making them very tricky to roll. Towards the end of this video, I'll show you how to turn these trimmings into a tasty little side treat, so they aren't wasted. Then we need a good mayonnaise or aioli. For the fillings in my wraps today, I have some leafy salad greens, red cabbage, carrot and spinach, which I'll turn into a coleslaw. It's easier to add it to the wraps pre-mixed than as individual ingredients. If you'd like some tips on knife skills and cutting vegetables, make sure you check out my video on basic knife skills. I'll leave a link in the description below. The fillings for wraps are endless, so use your imagination. Anything salady works really well, like coleslaw, salad greens, tomatoes, cucumbers, avocado, corn, pickles, or even antipasto ingredients. I'd love to use tomato, avocado and cucumber in these wraps, but these aren't currently in season here in New Zealand, so they're very pricey, and if I did buy them, they wouldn't taste very good anyway. Buying fruit and vegetables in season means you're getting your produce at its best, and they're in abundance, so they're not horrendously expensive. A double win. The other fillings I have are sliced gherkins or pickles, grated cheese, creamy tuna, ham, and a tomato relish and chutney for added flavour. Let's get into filling these. First we lay them out. I've got 4 wraps and I'll just put them out in 2 lines. If you are making lots of these, just continue the lines further. And now for tip number 1, the glue. We need something to use as a glue to stick our wraps together so they don't fall apart. If you've seen my video on cocktail sandwiches, you would have heard me talking about gluing before. I like to use mayonnaise and I find it works best to have it in a piping bag, as it restricts how much you're using, but still gives good coverage. If you use too much, it would become slippery and then your filling could slide out of the wrap when it's picked up. A great tip here is to pipe it diagonally over the entire wrap. You want to cover the surface of the whole wrap, so when you roll it up, it's like glue between each layer, and that helps to hold the wrap together. I don't like to spread the mayonnaise on with a knife, as this often results in using too much, and then it will just ooze out when we roll the wrap up. Tip number 2, filling the wrap. Many people seem to think they need to cover the entire surface of the wrap with their fillings. This seems logical, but as you saw earlier, if you do this, the fillings tend to bunch up and slide right out of the wrap. So I find the best way to do this is to layer the fillings up in one spot. Add a line of leafy greens about this far up from the bottom. Then add some of this beautiful coleslaw. Don't you love the colours on here so far? These deep greens, the purple, the bright orange from the carrots. This is definitely going to look stunning when cut and plated. Then I'll add some tuna to 2 of these, and some ham to the other 2 to create variety. Now I'll add the gherkins, which I've drained so they won't make the wraps soggy. I'll add it to 1 tuna and 1 ham wrap, and the grated cheese to the other 2 so that the fillings aren't all the same. I'll add the chutney and relish. If you were doing a large quantity of wraps, I highly recommend putting these into piping bags too, but for just a couple, you can spoon or lightly spread these on. Stacking the fillings up like this gives us a good gauge on how full the wrap will be. And now we can roll these up. There's 2 ways to do this, and I'll show you both. Either fold the edge of the wrap right over the filling and tuck it in nice and tightly, and then roll it up like this. Or fold a flap over and then come back to the fold and start rolling right to the end like this. Whichever way you choose to do this, you're wanting to get the wraps rolled and tightly rolled. So choose the method that you find easiest to roll them up nice and tight. I've just paused the video here because it shows very clearly how the mayonnaise piped on an angle over the whole wrap acts as a glue to stick it all together. If you'd only piped mayonnaise under the filling, you'd have no glue to stick this bit down. These will keep in the fridge like this for a number of hours, so they're a great make-ahead food. If I was doing this, I'd cover them with a slightly damp tea towel to keep them nice and fresh, and cut them just before I need to serve them. So how can we cut these? This brings us to tip number 3, cutting for presentation. Some people cut these into little rings and use toothpicks to hold them together. Or if you're serving it for a full lunch or dinner, you can cut it in an angle through the centre here. And then stand them up on each other. But today I'm going to cut these into smaller portions for a lunch platter. I'm going to use this serrated bread knife and a sawing motion to get the cleanest cut possible. I'll cut each wrap into 3. And then angle slice each piece about so far up. Try to keep the angles similar so that there isn't too much difference on your final plate. By cutting the wraps this way, we're able to stand them up, which makes for a very cool presentation. They'll hold together and give your plate height and balance. If your knife blade gets a bit wet with chutney, give it a wipe down so you don't smear the residue on the next wrap you cut. I've got 2 different options to serve these on. This is a wooden chopping board. I like the dark colour of this to contrast with the pale wrap colour. And I've also got this round black plate. It will also contrast with the pale wrap colour for a bit of a different look. I've got 12 pieces to go on the chopping board. I'll put 2 here in the centre facing each other. It's always easiest to start with a central point and work out from there. Then I'll put a few along the edges facing the centre to create 3 rows of 4. To finish it off, I'll add a little lettuce garnish here in the centre. On this other plate, I'll point the wraps outwards so the colours can be seen from the front. I'll follow the same circular pattern created by the plate. I'll put a couple of pieces into the centre, one in each direction to fill in the gap. And here's a little lettuce posy to garnish the plate. Remember those little wrap offcuts? We can turn these into some tasty tortilla chips. While I prepare them, I've got a pizza stone in the oven warming up to a nice hot temperature. Using a pizza wheel, you can cut these offcuts into rough triangular shapes. Spray or brush them with a little olive oil and then a sprinkle of salt. You can spice them up with some of your favourite spices: garlic salt, ground cumin seeds, paprika or Cajun spice. I'm using a little sprinkle of paprika on mine. Then we can arrange them on our hot pizza stone and bake them for a few minutes. Don't turn your back on them though, because they seem to have a very small window between being perfectly crisped and black. Here they are. These are absolutely delicious, dipped in a salsa or guacamole or chili sauce, and they're a much healthier option than the store-bought tortilla chips. Today we talked about making wraps, but have you ever made a ploughman's lunch platter? I'll show you how in this video here. Happy wrapping!